All right, so I'm looking forward to sharing with you. Thanks for again attending and wanting to know more about suspensions. What do we do about them? How do we handle it? Again, my name is Brandon Clayton, the Community Engagement Specialist with iTutor. My background is in education. I've been teaching for 10 years, secondary math. I've been a little bit of everything, I feel like. I've done the math. I've been the district SEL specialist. I've been a district coach. So going from all through K through 12 over our district. I've been in a lot of classrooms. The last year I was an intern principal, so I got to see through a different lens from an administrative perspective, some of the benefits and challenges that come with leading a campus. So looking at it from an educator perspective, the different programs, how do you translate policies into what works in a classroom? But one of the things that I want to talk about today that stood out to me is, what do you do with students when they are suspended? What do you do with students that are suspended? Now, if you're in a school district or campus like I was, it was always a challenge. Well, I won't say always, but oftentimes it was a challenge because you have your core instruction that you're trying to keep at a certain level, but then you have students who are suspended. And one of the things I love about the service that iTutor offers here is that you can suspend the student now without suspending the learning. Now, I don't know what it's like on your campus. I don't know what happens in the spaces, whether it be in school suspension or out of school suspension. I'm not sure what happens in those spaces, but from what I've seen, it's been a struggle, to say the least, to keep the rigor of instruction up. In most places, can I be honest? In most places, there simply isn't any instruction going on. There's simply no instruction going on. And you don't see it, just kind of the cycle continues in itself because the student doesn't receive the instruction. They're already suspended and they come back and they're behind and the behavior increases and so on and so forth. If you've been a teacher, especially if you've been an administrator, to see this cycle, you know what I'm talking about. So I'm excited to present a new product or a new service. Actually, it's not new. We've been doing it for a while, but to make it make you aware of it, I want to talk a little bit about how this is a problem nationally and what iTutor brings to the table as a solution and how it looks. And then lastly, how you can get connected to learn more about connecting yourself with these services through iTutor. So let's just jump right in. Type in the chat form. I see Janine's here. Janine, hello. Good to see you, or good to be in the same space with you. If you could tell me a little bit about where you're coming from, what brought you here, what you're looking for, that would help me out a little bit to know maybe if I can answer some questions right off the bat before I get into it. So are you an administrator? Are you in leadership and education or somehow? Why is this a topic for you? If you want to type that in at some point, that'll really help. National suspensions. Recent estimates show that nationally students have lost 11 million days of instruction across one academic year. Per student suspended, this equates to roughly 4.5 days of learning. Now, you know the context that we're operating in right now. We can stand to lose no more days of instruction, trying to bridge the gap of the learning loss, as it's called, or many say not learning loss, but learning that never happened. We don't want to lose any more days. And we know as the school year opens back up, there's going to be suspensions. That's in the policy of just about every district I've seen. There's going to be suspensions. And dare I say, sometimes more so, because we're finding that kids are coming back to school ill-equipped with the discipline and the behaviors that we may have seen 3 or 4 years before this. So that could be the case. But either way, if it stayed the same, what are we doing with those students? Examining in-school suspension specifically, over 2.5 million students receive in-school suspension during one academic year, and districts often struggle. It's an understatement for many districts and many campuses. I was at a high school campus and middle school campus, elementary school. Actually, when I think of all of them, they struggle to staff those types of programs, struggle to connect with those students and still provide rigorous, bona fide instruction so that as to decrease the learning loss. Now, this was only taken into account in school suspensions, but you and I know that that's not the only kind of suspension. We have out of school suspensions as well. So what are we doing about that? Now, the one thing I love about iTutor and the service that iTutor brings is that we have a virtual suspension program. To ensure students miss fewer minutes of valuable instruction time, iTutor offers a virtual suspension program in which students are provided a safe environment to receive synchronous instruction. I need to highlight that. I didn't know what I needed to before, but synchronous instruction, because synchronous instruction is not happening in all quote unquote tutoring programs. Sometimes you're dealing with a bot. Sometimes you're dealing with asynchronous, where it's a back and forth, but a time lapse. But in this case, just as you see on your screen, there's synchronous instruction. There's eye-to-eye contact and a state certified educator. So these educators are coming with the knowledge and with the expertise, with the experience of working with students in a brick and mortar classroom and being state certified for doing so. The model uniquely eliminates the typical lag times in enrollment, which may be attributed to administrative responsibilities and coordination of available educators, by guaranteeing instruction within just 24 hours of student enrollment by the school. What does that mean? That means you identify a student need to be in suspension, because normally that's the case, right? You find out something happens, there's some event, and then there's a need to place in suspension pretty quickly because of this. And to best support their learning and reentry to school, educators heavily emphasize social emotional learning while targeting those academic skills. Why am I mentioning social emotional learning? Now, I told you my background is with social emotional learning in our district. I'm actually getting even further certified in this area. And I don't have to tell you about how this word and this ideal, this holistic approach to educating students is important, especially if there's been some type of challenge already for the reason why we are in suspension. We can't just move on as another day, another usual day in school, when there's been some kind of I'm trying to think of the word, infraction of some sort. We need to address that. And while it may not be addressed directly, there are some social and emotional pieces that you want to be connected. This is for any student, but even more so for students who are out of school or taken away from the general population to connect with what's going on. This is a piece that we build into every single one of our sessions. The first 5, sometimes 10 minutes, connecting with that student to make sure they have these pieces. What is the impact? So what have we done so far as a company in working with students with suspension? So since the introduction of this service offering in September of 2021, iTutor has been able to support schools to implement a just-in-time suspension solution, providing 382 virtual suspension sessions to over 200 students. These sessions add up to 45,000 minutes of instruction. These are to students who normally would not receive any instruction, or very little instruction has been my experience. But they're receiving bona fide, state certified educators giving them instructions in the areas of their need, making up 3.5 hours of lost instructional time per student. When reflecting on this program, educators mentioned creating meaningful connections with their students. It helped not only their attendance, but their academic work, but it also facilitated reflection on behavior that led to the suspension. You know, speaking of this, I'm recalling one of the quotes that one of the educators left and thinking about their connection with the student. One of the educators, Lauren, mentioned, iTutor educator said, "I made sure to connect with him on a personal basis from the get-go." Right? So, because we're dealing with teachers. Teachers understand the need for relationships. No one ever disputes that. It's no different with a virtual space, and it's certainly no different when you're working with a student who's been suspended. She goes on to say he was comfortable sharing with me and even seemed to speak remorsefully about his lengthy suspension. Now he attends all of his sessions, which are 3 times a week, is on time, is focused the entire hour, and does all the work, including the homework. And we made a plan for completing his missing assignments, going back over basics of language and moving forward on to new topics. He's on the right track and is a pleasure to work with. Now, think about the students that you've had in suspension, whether it be in school, out of school, 1 day, 3 days, 4 days. It would be lovely to have that statement at the end. He is on the right track and a pleasure to work with. She is on the right track and a pleasure to work with. Obviously, there was an infraction or something happened that caused a suspension, and those two pieces won't often be there where someone can say they're on the right track and a pleasure. Oftentimes, they get put in the pool with the label those students. They're constantly behind academically. They're constantly a behavior problem. But wouldn't it be nice without the heavy lift of coming up with a new schedule, without the heavy lift of having to find some instructors, to hire some new people, to know that you do have a plan that you can employ that will keep the relationships high and keep the rigor in the where it's supposed to be? Well, we have that. You have that option now. So what does it look like? What does this look like for iTutor? And we mentioned already that it's safe, effective method for students facing suspension, state certified instructors. So when we start to look at what it may look like on your campus, the delivery model is as such. There's one educator from up to 15 students. Up to 15 students can be in this session. Why is that important? You may say to yourself, and this happened with one of our campuses, they said, look, I only need 2 or 3 students. And these are in 2-hour blocks, mind you, as well. So you'll decide, I want to do a couple of hours during the school day, as you can see on the availability here, during the school day. And that's another huge benefit is it doesn't have to be after school in the weekends. It's right there during class time, just like it normally would be. But you'll get a couple of hours. You'll set aside maybe 9 to 11, 1 to 3, 3 to 5, whatever works for you. And you'll put a couple of students in there. One campus said, look, we only have 3 students that I anticipate, and these hours could be purchased for a semester at a time or purchased for a semester at a time. We'll say Monday, Wednesday, between 11 and 1, we need suspension hours. So this particular campus had 2 or 3 students out, and they weren't fully using it to the 15. And what was suggested is, how about bring your in-school suspended students in there as well? See, as long as there's internet access, regardless of if it's at home or at school or wherever, all those students can still attend and get bona fide instruction and get the connection and be in tune and attuned to something, some kind of program that they won't lose learning and lose instructional hours. So what else is important here? Well, we look at how it works. We see that, number one, districts, that's you and your district, will establish a schedule for the 2-hour block, which we mentioned. You'll come up with a block. This is what works for us. After that, the students, once they're enrolled, can connect from any location. And that's the plus I was just mentioning a second ago. And then next, attendance and sessions reports are provided to the district. These are huge and priceless because the numbers matter, right? The numbers matter for the financially for a school district. They matter because we want to be able to track and record the attendance because that's for obvious reasons. We need you to actually show up. But all those sessions are recorded too. So that's another thing. If someone misses, or the school wants to access this material again, those sessions are still recorded. So you have this way of tracking. So you'll see a program journey. I'm not going to go through the whole piece here, but you got a get starting piece. As you get started, you got the point. We'll determine who the point of contact is, verify the service, get your dates, your schedule, your roster, get your rostering and staffing together, orient the student, classes begin. This is actually, it looks like a process, but it's a pretty quick turnaround once we get you connected. The last step is really, if this sounds like something that you can benefit from. And I'm guessing that you're watching this and you attended this webinar right now because it spoke to you in some way, this in saying, we have a need here. Imagine your suspension room, whether it be in school or students out. Imagine the instruction they're receiving now. And imagine what a difference it will make for them to receive an instruction, sometimes 101, 104, 104, up to 15. You can have 15 students in that class receiving great instruction. What kind of instruction will they receive? Someone may be asking. They bring their own work, and we have certified teachers who are able to teach multiple subjects, math, the science, the history, and still help them on their assignments. So while they don't provide all the instruction for every student, because every student is different places, the students bring their work just as they would in the normal ISS. The teachers will be responsible for sending the work down and making it accessible. It's the same way. We have ways where the student can upload the work, show it on the camera, share their screen, and it's very interactive. Matter of fact, what I didn't tell you is I was one of the educators with iTutor. I used to supplement my income after school teaching. So I understand how this worked on the educator side as well. So it was fascinating and exciting because I was able to utilize all the tools that I would in a brick and mortar classroom, including building connection, including looking at their assignments and bringing in so many resources to help them answer the questions. Again, if this is of interest to you, and I hope it is, because I know it's going to make a difference this coming year for your campus and for those students. It turns those students around once they know what's going on and they're able to connect. Go to iTutor.com and click on schedule a meeting, and you'll get a picture up like this. Click on your state. And when you click on your state, we're going to take you to a page where your representative will pop up, a little bit about who they are, and you can schedule a meeting, 15, 30, 60-minute meeting. And you schedule that meeting, and all your questions will be answered about how to get all your solutions set up just for your campus. One of the things we pride ourselves with here at iTutor is that we have state certified educators. Some have tutors who can help, but ours are state certified. We also pride ourselves on creating a custom plan for you, not just giving you a one size fits all model, because we understand how different every campus is. So we want to meet with you to discuss how we can create a plan that fits you. Now, here's an example of what that one of those pages will look like. I hope this has been helpful for you. If you have questions, please type those in the chat. I want to make sure I answer those to the best of my knowledge, but forgive me if I have to point you to one of these solution consultants if I don't. But please type some in the chat. I want to give a couple minutes for that to happen. If not, we'll close here and make sure you have that link. I'll put that in the chat as well, just to iTutor. Actually, I'll put the exact link. I'll leave this up here. And I'll put the exact link up here as you think about any questions maybe you have.